Hi guys, welcome to this month's Q&A. It's where we take questions from the previous 5 videos and I'll do my best to answer them. I'm out here in the Etsy shop in case you don't recognize where I'm at, and I'm actually sitting at the table that I had redone this winter. You may remember it from a video that was called a dining room challenge video, and I had so much fun doing it, but I can't believe I actually haven't done anything more with it as far as it's just been sitting here ever since I set it up. I've been so busy, guys. I don't know where time gets to, but I know we're all busy. We all have the same amount of time. I'm not, complaining, but it just seems I don't get around to getting everything done that I want to, but enough of that. MB is finished working for the day, so she's gone. So I'm pretty much by myself out here, except for Pebbles is walking about exploring, and then also Deeks is here. That is my sister and her family's cat. And he actually comes in here, follows MB in sometimes when she's working, and he'll be out here with her. It's so cute. And sometimes he'll even come in the house and visit me for a couple minutes, but usually he wants back out again. And he was sleeping here when I came out, but he's awake now, but he is quite the character. But getting to the questions here, I confess I did not do my homework. I did not pull up one question. I have no idea what's coming here. MB had gotten them together for me, so I'm not sure how it's going to go, but we'll see. And I feel like I'm kind of fading out here. The lighting is too bright. That's the thing with not having a person behind the camera. I have to do my own adjusting here and just hope for the best. So hopefully that's better. So getting to the questions, the first ones are from last month's Q&A video. Dawn Guillory says, you have mentioned lighting in your videos. Have you ever considered a ring light? Those are great to keep consistent lighting for your videos and Etsy pictures. One less thing for you to have to worry about. I don't own a ring light. I've seen them already and I've thought about getting one, but I just never have gotten around to doing it. I do have a few of those. I think they're called studio lights. They're kind of the soft white bulbs, on a post thing. And of course I always go for natural lighting if at all possible. There's just nothing better than that if you ask me. But I have used those artificial lights already and they seem to work, pretty well. But again, I'm thinking a ring light would probably be even better, so I should check into that. Daily Dose of Learning says, hi Mary, may I ask how you put those grid lines on your windows? Oh, those grid lines, let me tell you, they can actually be a pain. I don't want to complain, but if I want to clean my windows, I of course have to take those out, clean the windows, put them back in, and they just they snap in, I guess you could say. They have little pegs on each little grid thing, and a lot of them are broken off, so they actually go in better than they used to. This is my home place where we live, and I remember being a young girl at home and having to clean windows, and it was so hard to get those things in. Like you were at your last section to kind of snap back in, and then another one would pop out. Very frustrating. And those windows were put in the 90s, and it was right before they kind of came up with putting them in between the glass, like the grid lines. They were good windows for their time, but they actually need to be replaced. A lot of them don't work anymore, but I will definitely not be sad to see those grid things go. But yeah, as far as, removing them or putting them back in, just kind of snap them back into place. Judy Evanhus says, I told my husband that I want a paint sprayer and he wants me to research it. What brand do you have? Oh, I couldn't be without my paint sprayer. Once you have one, you probably are going to wonder how you did without. It's just nice. Of course, in the winter time, I don't, use it. Be outside to use it, but I have a DeWalt brand, and I'll link it down below in case you want the exact one. It's a really good one. I love it. But keep in mind, you would need a good air system to run it. It's not just buying the sprayer. You would need an air compressor. I'm pretty blessed here with my dad had actually set up a whole, air system where I have an air compressor and a big storage tank. Just endless supply of air to use, which is awesome. But you can also go into Lowe's or Home Depot or somewhere and get an air compressor. You would probably need to tell them what kind of sprayer you have so they would know what size air compressor you would need. It's pretty important to have a compressor that is large enough to handle the amount of airflow. I had the experience one time where I painted at another location and had my sprayer and used someone else's, just a small air compressor, and I had to actually stand there and wait in between my spraying, wait until the compressor had enough air in that tank again. And I'm not a very patient person, so that was quite tedious for me. Dave Taylor says, Dave's wife here, I would like to know where you get your fabric. Do you order online? I actually get a lot of my fabric at Zink's Fabric Outlet, and I'm going to put their link down below. They actually have an online store where you can buy their fabric. There's pros and cons with that place. I love their prices, and they have good service and awesome fabric, but often they just have a limited amount. So if I go buy fabric for, you know, something for the Etsy shop, it's so hard sometimes to know how much items to list on the Etsy shop because of that, because I'm not sure can they get that, you know, back in stock or not. We've actually had that happen already where we ran out and we still ended up selling a few items and had to let people know that we don't have it anymore. But they definitely have a nice selection of just all sorts of fabrics. And then for the skirts, I always get the fabric at Mount Hope Fabrics. They have good quality fabric and they usually have an endless supply of it. They also have an online store, so I'll link it down below in case you want to check it out. But they have really great service, good quality, and good prices, I think. Kathy Terrell says, have you tried putting Mod Podge on top of a sprayed jar to keep the paint from chipping? I've never really tried that on a jar, but I imagine that would work because Mod Podge definitely really seals something quite well. I've done it with other items. Often if I want to kind of seal something, I'll go for my polycrylic. I've never really done that on jars because usually if I paint jars, well, actually almost always when I paint jars, I'll use like an oil-based paint out of a spray can, and I always feel like that paint is pretty much there to stay. I'm feeling a little paranoid right now. I'm not sure. Pebbles is lying on my microphone thing. I'm not sure was I coming through or not, but hopefully the connection was still good. Shirley Moss says, I also would like to know, how do you know which paint to use for which project? I see you change paint types quite a lot. I use wood for my projects, but never quite know which paint would be best. I do that a lot, don't I? I kind of switch paints on you guys. I always think when I do that, I'm like, this is probably pretty confusing, like what does she really like? But honestly, my favorite paint is probably just my go-to paint is the Do It Best brand. It's the Best Look paint. They do have a more expensive one that I don't really care that much for, but I like theirs. It's about $30 a gallon, something like that last time I checked. And that is probably, again, that would be my pick if I were to go, you know, paint just a big project or a room, but sometimes I like to try different things. I enjoy, you know, trying out some of the different chalk paints or milk paints, just to kind of see, you know, how they actually are. Most of the chalk paints that I've ever used, I always liked. I can't remember having, you know, bad experiences with them. I think it's just personal preference. You know, of course, with chalk paints, you would need to apply that wax over top. Usually, if you want, in fact, this table was painted with chalk paint, and if I put Annie Sloan clear wax over top here, and that, you know, gave it the nice, smooth, easy to wipe surface. Valspar is also a good paint. I have used that in the past. Lowe's, you know, carries that, and I'm sure other places do too, but our local hardware has the Do It Best brand. That's probably why I kind of go for that. It's, you know, not far for me to go get some. So there's another question here from Shirley Moss about the writing you print. If you use vinyl, do you have to cover it with sealer afterwards, or is it waterproof? If you paint the letters on through a stencil or freehand, do you have to seal those as well? I never seal my vinyl decals. I get a lot of questions about that, and I would even hesitate to do so. I would be afraid the sealer would kind of creep underneath the vinyl maybe and, you know, pull it up. The vinyl that we use, the Oracle 631, it's not considered a permanent vinyl. You can actually remove it if you want, but it really stays put. I've been so impressed with it. Last summer I had a sign on our front porch on an old window that I used the Oracle 631 vinyl instead of, you know, a permanent, and it stayed put the whole summer. It got, you know, wind and rain and bright sunshine. And then as far as sealing letters that you paint on, you know, using a stencil or freehand, I often will seal that with a polycrylic just to keep it nice longer. The next question here is from Sheila McDade, and I recognize this name. She is an author. She had actually sent me some of her books and also a beautiful pillowcase. Thank you, Sheila, for that. I'm not sure that I ever properly thanked you, and that goes for many of you that send me things. I don't do, you know, videos on what I receive, you know, in the mail, and I probably should, so I can, you know, thank you guys, but I just don't get around to it. I kind of chose to not do that, but I really appreciate it. It does not go unnoticed. It makes my day if I receive these letters of encouragement and cards and notes and things you guys send. I'm just blown away by your kindness. Thank you for all that. So that was all on a side note there, but getting back to the question, she asks, how do you keep pillows on your swing and outside furniture from blowing away in strong winds? After having to chase mine down the street, I started bringing them in when the weatherman predicted windy days, but still sometimes got surprised by a gust. I have taken to sewing a little ribbon to the corner of them and attaching it to the swing or chair. That is a good idea. I love that idea. We actually don't have a lot of wind, like strong winds like some people would have here in the woods. We're kind of surrounded by hills and trees, so that really helps. But every now and then we'll have, actually recently here, often in March, we really get some windy days. But thankfully we don't really have that issue around the house. And I think if I would have that issue, I'd probably do the ribbon thing too, or just, you know, fasten something to the back of it and tie it to a chair. That's a good idea. Barbara Darling says, how different is your Pennsylvania Dutch? Much different than German. It is different than German because I've heard people speak German and I have a hard time following along. Pennsylvania Dutch is a mixture of different languages kind of put together. It's kind of sad. It's not really a pure, you know, authentic language. I'm told, I should have done my homework, but if I'm correct here, I think it's a mixture of, you know, Dutch, German, Swiss, and there's even some English mixed in there. It's quite the one-of-a-kind language, you could say. So the next questions are from the antiques video, where I went to local antique malls shopping. Ms. Sewell 43 says, nice video, thank you. My question is, when you come across an item such as a wood piece, if it has a scratch, do you have a fix for scratch repairs you can share? I often don't bother with, I think to me it doesn't really bother me. I can see that it would bother some people if something would be scratched up, but to me it kind of adds character, so I'm probably prone to not fixing scratches. I guess I should do some research on that. I imagine there would be ways, you know, to do that, maybe kind of buff it and kind of refinish it, but often I would feel if I'd start doing something like that, I may end up messing it up more than it already is. So I probably just maybe kind of embrace the charm of, you know, it being scratched up a bit. Lucine Henberry says, do you ask permission before filming in any of the malls? I don't. Maybe I should. I don't know. I never really thought about that. I try to be respectful as far as not, you know, getting people in my videos, although it does happen sometimes. I remember growing up, you know, I grew up Amish, of course, and I remember oftentimes being in a store somewhere or just, you know, out in public, and people would literally, you know, maybe stop their vehicles, get out, and, you know, take pictures of us as we were driving along in our buggy, or even in the store, you know, just to our faces. They would just snap pictures of us, and I always felt that was so rude. I'm sure they didn't mean it that way, but it almost seemed to me like we were, you know, like animals in a zoo or something on display. I know, again, it wasn't meant to be taken that way, but I just kind of know how that feels, so I try to be respectful with that. Chatty Cathy says, how come you didn't go to thrift stores? Oh, it was tempting. I know I was looking for these certain things, and I kept passing by these thrift stores, but I was filming the video for antique mall shopping, so I thought I'd stick with that, but that's for another date, I'm sure. Deborah Glaves says, why don't you use something from your collection? You have beautiful furniture in your shop. I had been looking when I was antique mall shopping, maybe some of you remember, I had been looking for a cabinet to put inside our kind of the entryway area, and I honestly didn't really have anything in my stash of furniture, which is in the room behind me here. I had looked there, I debated some things, but it just, the wall was kind of narrow enough, you know, I had to have this certain size, and I ended up making something then, which turned out okay, but I guess that's why I didn't really use any of my pieces. Devana Chase says, love seeing you at the shops, used to live in Ohio, I see so many different things there that you show that can't be found in Texas. You know, I hear that a lot, that different areas have different things in their antique malls and thrift stores. I find that interesting, that even long ago, especially the antique malls, that even long ago people would have bought different things depending on where they lived, I guess. That guy is a hunk. Does he have a single uncle, grandfather, LOL? She's talking about John. I need to pass that on to him. Barbara White says, did you know you have a high-pitched noise when you voice over? Oh my. I couldn't watch with the voice because it hurt my dog's ears. Well, I'm sorry about that. I didn't notice while I was editing, but I could have missed it. Now, sometimes when I do voiceovers, I may have some background, I don't know, maybe a fan or air conditioner, but that wouldn't have been the case here with the antique video. So I'm not sure what was going on, but let me know if you guys notice anything like that. I don't want to cause anyone any discomfort hearing my voice. It's probably bad enough the way it is without any high-pitched noise. James Swanson says, Mary, you are a crazy driver, LOL. Well, let's think I'm not, and it's just the fast-forward motion in the video that makes me look that way. So the next questions are from the spring mantle video. The first one here, Penny says, Mary, your mantle is absolutely stunning. Thank you. Now you can add welding to your repertory. Did your husband like it? I'll bet he's so proud of you. Actually, he was kind of impressed. He kind of got a laugh out of it too. He saw how I jumped every time that welder wand thing hit the metal. It's definitely a little harder than I had expected, but I'm glad I tried it, and I'm not sure that I'd do it again unless I'd be really desperate. Bethany R says, will you do more Cricut farmhouse DIYs? I have one, and I'm not good with coming up with signs and things to make. I'm sure you are. It just kind of takes the right moment. You have to be in the right mood sometimes to come up with ideas. But I'll definitely, keep that in mind. I do have a few ideas on some Cricut videos that I want to do in the future sometime. Maria Adams says, do you plan to put that large antique sink in your house? She's referring to that old sink that my husband had picked up for me in the woods. It was on somebody's trash pile, and sadly that sink is probably too far gone to actually use it, especially as a everyday sink in your house. I kind of have plans. I have a few ideas of something I want to do with that sink eventually, but I would love to have an antique looking sink like that, maybe someday. Marlene Stevenson says, I was just looking for your skirts. Do you not sell them anymore? Yes, I'm still selling them. In fact, we just revised the pattern. It is now more of the skirts are have more of a sleek look. In fact, the mannequin behind me here is wearing one of them. I don't know, are you guys familiar with the Old Navy, some of Old Navy's skirts? They have the ones that are, maybe they're pencil skirts, like the band, along the waist is kind of, the elastic is folded in, and it's not gathered much. It's more like the sleek look. But our skirts aren't like narrow like the pencil skirts would be. You can actually step, with them, but the waist would kind of look like the Old Navy skirts, in case you're, familiar with those. And I should warn you, if you did order from our previous skirts, these are going to fit a lot smaller. The previous ones kind of fit almost too big, and these are probably the other way, but I really like them for myself, and I'll put my link down below in the description box for the website where you can order them from if you're interested. Rochelle Edwards says, just wanted to say thank you for sharing all your inspiration and ideas. My mother and I absolutely love your channel. Well, thank you. I moved away from home, and your videos give a way for us to be together even though we are so many miles apart. Would you mind giving a shout out to her on your new Q&A? Her name is Vonda. She loves your style and loves talking about the newest things you share from South Carolina and Georgia. Well, thank you, Vonda and Rochelle, for watching. You sound like sweet people. I'm sure it would be hard to be miles apart. I'm so glad that my videos can somehow help you feel more connected maybe. My parents just returned home from Florida. They had been down for the winter, and it's so good to have them back. I'm not sure how I would deal with that on a regular basis, throughout the year if they were that far apart all the time. The next questions are from the entryway where I had built that cabinet. Marlene Goho says, you're amazing with the woodworking. I watch in awe. Thank you. How long did it take you to do? I would say I could have done it in a day. I know it went over the course of a couple of days just whenever I had time, but if I would have had a good forenoon and an afternoon, I think I could have completed it in a day. Elliot Dixon says, are the numbers you put on your cabinet random or do they have meaning? Definitely random, no meaning at all. I just kind of like I have certain numbers that I kind of like to see visually, and that's kind of the ones I picked out. Rebecca Brock says, when you do building projects like this, do you listen to music or just keep your wheels spinning on what the next project will be? If you do listen to music, who is the artist you most enjoy? I always have music on or an audiobook playing when I cook or do projects. Actually, I rarely listen to music when I'm doing a project. I kind of like to just embrace the stillness, I guess. And then of course if I'm working outside, I never do because I love to hear the outside sounds especially. I do love music though. It's not that I'm not a fan of music. The only time I listen to it is when I'm driving, and then when I'm in the shower I often do. I enjoy various music, but my favorite is definitely old country. If it's from the 70s, 80s, and even 90s, love it. And I rarely miss a Country Gold Saturday Night by Rowdy Yates. The next question here, could you list the different tools you use for cutting and sanding and nailing and screwing? I would like the name of each one. I will put it down below in the description box for you. I would kind of need to look over the video and make sure I don't miss anything. Richard Wilson says, does the poly not smell up your house, and is it safe to inhale? It is not a smelling product at all, thankfully. Love that polycrylic. It's a Minwax brand product, and it is like a water base or a latex base. It's not your oil base where you'd have, you know, weird vapors and chemical smells. So the last questions are from the plant room makeover. I call it a room, but it's actually just a small space. Susan Elizabeth says, what do your boys and husband say when you've remodeled things in your house? We actually kind of joke about it, John and I. Now the boys don't really say that much, you know, they've grown up with it. They'll pass their opinion if they don't like something or if they like something. John, just the other day actually, he told me that he would not be surprised at anything, you know, if he comes home from work. Nothing would surprise him that I'd be doing around the house. And he probably shouldn't even say that, because that almost gives me the right to start tearing down walls, right? But no, really, I joke about it, but I'm really blessed with how tolerant he is of my, like years ago, I actually one day decided to tear out some of the kitchen cabinet, like a section. I mean, he really didn't say that much about it. In fact, I think he was kind of impressed with what I did. I had swung the cabinet around and kind of created an L-shaped, you know, kitchen. It's still that way. Definitely, you know, God knew what he was doing when he put us together. Not that I always feel that way, but when it comes to those matters, definitely a blessing for me anyway. Karen says, my question is, how do you use that door? Does it open out? I wish it would open out. That would actually be a good idea, but no, it swings in. And I do get a lot of questions about that. People can't understand why I'm blocking the doorway there with all my plants, but in all honesty, we rarely use that door. I feel like I'm probably the only one that just on a rare occasion will use it. Sometimes I'll let the cats, you know, in and out through that door, and then I'll run out and, you know, get something in the backyard or whatever. And it might not show on the video as much, but it actually opens wide enough that anyone would fit through. But if it was a door that we would use on a really regular basis and other people would be walking through, I probably wouldn't block it that way, but just for us and the little that we use it, it kind of works. Peggy Heron says, how do you keep your cats out of the plants? My cat would have them all over the floor. I too live in Ohio. We were in your neck of the woods Thursday getting my garden seed at Berlin Seed. That's a good place for seed shopping. So my cats completely ignore my plants. I'm thankful for that. Now Pebbles, I've seen chew on like a spider plant leaf already. Every now and then, not on a regular basis. But I get that a lot. You know, people ask if my cats leave my plants alone, and I can see that a lot of cats would probably like that, to kind of dig around the soil and just, I mean, I myself love the smell of potting soil. I almost can't blame them, but I guess it's just a cat. Some cats probably prefer it and others don't. Teresa Lyons says, I'm curious, why didn't you take some of the pathos cuttings and root them in vases? I thought about doing that, and I know I can always do that with just take a cutting from my plant that I have now, but honestly just not enough room maybe to plant them out then. Just too busy with other things, I guess, but could totally have done that. My sister does a lot of that, you know, starts plants from cuttings like that. Susan Skinner says, did you think about doing the little piece of wall above the door? She's talking about the wallpaper, adding some wallpaper to that space. I think that would be great and make it look like a garden box. Actually, that would be a good idea. I didn't think of that. We'll see. Maybe I'll have to do that. I still have some left over. So that concludes the questions for today. I wish I could get the smell to you guys. I have a peach nectar candle burning beside me here. And by the time this video goes out, we will have them restocked on the Etsy shop. We are so low on candles right now, but we have the spring scents are going to be back in stock, and also a few new ones coming up. Excited for that. I hope you enjoyed the Q&A. Thanks for hanging out with me, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video. Bye.